Hey guys, welcome to the Whimsical Workshop. Today I'm going to share with you one of our new patterns called Night Blooms in the beautiful fabrics that it goes with and give you some tips on how to put the blocks together. So let's get started. Yay! So I'm very excited about the project today. It is our quilt called Night Blooms. It is featuring the collection Luminous Blooms from Benartex Fabrics. It is a beautiful quilt that is 84 by 84. I will put up the picture here, right here, so you can see it. We are showcasing the panel. Then we do a pieced block next to it, and we do a pieced sashing with flying geese, squares, and rectangles. And we finally finish it all off with a beautiful stripe from the border fabric, and we do miter those corners, which there is a really quick and easy way to do it, and I'm going to link the video for our mitered corners below. If you've ever been worried about doing mitered corners, afraid of mitered corners, you need to watch this video. It's a very simple technique, and once you see it, you'll never be afraid of miters again. So let's get into the fabrics. So the fabrics in this group are just really stunning. They fill their name. They are luminous. They do kind of look like, I mean, you can see right here, it just looks like it's lit from behind. Benartex does a really great job on their silk screening and printing. These are the blocks that we're going to fussy cut to make this first block here. They are beautiful and beautifully colored, followed by the lovely border stripe. This is a 4 border repeat. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4 full borders of the large flowers and 1, 2, 3, 4 full repeats of the small flowers. Believe it or not, there are companies that do a full repeat of borders and there's only 3, and you'd have to buy twice as much yardage because you need it for 2 for the sides and 2 for top and bottom. So again, this is not one of those. This one has 4 repeats of everything. I've never had an issue with that here. So be aware of that if you are buying a border fabric. All right, so this is the border, and we do use both. We're going to do the center, the large border against the quilt with the narrow border on the edge. So with one cut, we're going to get both. It'll look like a double border, which is always a really nice benefit when you get more bang for your buck. You don't have to work as hard. Now let's get into the fabrics that are actually in the project. Very beautiful fabrics. Obviously, we have plain black because we're using the black as the resting strip between all of these very bright luminous colors so that it reflects the color and doesn't quiet it down. We really want it to go boom. And if you want something to pop, you're going to put it against dark black. If you want to quiet it down, you would go with white. So in this case, I went black. So there's just the plain old black. Next up, we've got the stripe, which is very pretty. Very random, so you don't have to fussy cut it. It's small enough you can cut it and it'll look straight. And we have that in the royal color, and then we also are using it in the pastels. So we've got those two. And then we have the very pretty tossed flower. This is our medium to small print that we're using into the quilt. And then our medium print is the pretty butterflies. And then I love that it's predominantly blues, and then you get that pop of warm color. That shows a really nice control of color and a nice balance, because warm colors always attract more attention than soft colors. You will want to have more of a cool color in anything, whether it's a piece of fabric, a painting, a quilt, and then have pops of warm color because you need almost twice as much of this to balance this. Next up, we have the packed flowers. Very pretty. I think we're using this, I don't know where we're using. Oh, we're using this as the cornerstones in the sashing. Nice little compact square, giving you a pop of color at each corner. Then we have the loose tossed flowers. Again, with purples and pinks and oranges and reds. Another stripe. This one is the warm colors. This is the orange stripe. And then we have this really fun, funky diamond print. And it's just a very nice graphic print. It balances all the soft florals. It gives you some sharp edges. It really does. I love when you put graphic prints with florals because it balances the two. And then this guy is the back, but it is so, so pretty. It is the big tossed floral again. This one is the navy, and it is a bigger scale. Let me find that other one here. There we go. It's a bigger scale than the one we're using in the quilt. And I'm a big fan of having beautiful fabrics on the front of my quilt and on the back of my quilt because you look at both sides eventually. So it's nice to have a really nice print to go on the back. Now that we've gone through all of the fabrics, I'm going to show you how to put the two blocks together and go over some tips on the sashing and the border. And I'll link below our mitered border video that is great for learning how to do mitered corners. So let me get us going and I'll be back. So let's get started with first how to cut our panel blocks, because this is a fussy cut thing and panels can come in bigger or smaller than what we are anticipating when we design the pattern. So we always build in a cheater border to go around it that we're going to trim to size. But to cut these out, I'm going to show you how I do it. So first off, they need to be 9.5 inch square. I happen to have a 9.5 inch square ruler here, so I can actually center the little dot on the square. And I can see how big it is. So what I like to do is I don't like to fight with all this excess material. And they're very generous in between the blocks, so I am literally just going to cut this out. Same thing here. I know I'm outside of where I need it to be. And there, I can now fussy cut that, but I will just go ahead and cut all of these roughly out. And then I have less material to fight with, and it's so much easier to square them up and get them nice and clean cut. Okay, now that I've roughly cut them out, I'm going to go ahead and take my 9.5 inch square ruler. And again, I'm going to lay it on here and measure it. Now, if you don't have a 9.5 inch square ruler, you can find the center and find your center like this. And then you can use your 6.5 inch ruler or 8.5 inch ruler. Half of 9.5 is 4 3/4. So you could lay this on here and cut it. But because I have a square ruler, and I highly recommend you have a few squaring up rulers in your stash of rulers, we're just going to go ahead and square this guy up. So this is a 1/2 inch away from the flowers. That's a 1/2 inch away. That's a 1/2 inch away. See, it's not quite square. And that may have been how the design was done. So I don't have the file in front of me to double check. But there we go. That is centered. And then we're just going to go ahead, cut one side, cut the other. If you happen to have a turntable, that is the best time to use this. And then we're just going to reposition the ruler. And there we go. So that is how you're going to fussy cut your panels. So I'm going to get those cut. Okay, so now that we have got everything cut, let me run through how to make the different units in the blocks. So the first unit is going to be Flying Geese. There are lots of ways to do Flying Geese, but the pattern is written to do it traditionally. So let's run through that with you. And so what you will do is cut pieces just like the pattern says. This is 3.5 by 6.5, and these are each 3.5. You're going to put one on the corner and you're going to sew from point to point to make it a flip and sew so we can flip it open. Now, how I recommend doing this is the traditional method is to take a ruler and draw a line from point to point. But when you're doing this, you're only using 2 points to align the ruler and to try to get a straight line. So if you've ever done Flying Geese and they haven't turned out perfect, it's partly because we're just drawing a line using 2 points in space. So this is how I recommend doing it. If you have a ruler that is a 45-degree ruler, this is a 45-degree ruler with the 1/4 inch seam built in. This ruler is the non-slip multi-size 6 inch Flying Geese. and 45/90 triangle ruler from Creative Grids. That's a mouthful. We like to call it the Pac-Man Ruler after one of my students gave us that nickname. You can use this to do flying geese and half square triangles and quarter square triangles and all kinds of things. Another ruler you can use if you have one around is the folded corner clipper, and that just looks like this ruler. It's just it's just a 45-degree ruler. You may have one of those around there, a little more popular than this one, but this is my favorite, and we do have a link for this below if you're interested in the ruler, as well as a whole video on showing you what this ruler does besides what I'm going to do. So how I use this ruler is I'm going to align the top of the square with the top of the ruler, the side of the square with the side of the ruler. Let's see if I can get the glare away. There we go. So again, I'm going to align the top of the ruler with the top of the square, the side of the ruler with the side of the square, and the 3.5 line with the bottom of the square, as well as this diagonal line should go from corner to corner. So now instead of using 2 points to align my ruler, I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4 different points of reference, and it makes it a much more accurate line. So I'm drawing the line on the square. And then when I go to lay it on my rectangle, there is a big triangle and a small triangle. The small triangle always points out to the corner that you're going to flip the piece out. Then when you go to sew this on the machine, what we have here, your 1/4 inch foot edge goes on the drawn line and you still sew from point to point. So I'm going to hold that up there so you can see. There's the 1/4 inch foot line and there's my sewn line. So that's what you want to do your flip and sew. So once you've done that, this gets flipped open and look at that. It aligns with the corner just about perfectly. You're going to find a much more accurate flying geese by marking them that way. Again, there's lots of different ways to do flying geese. I will also link that video below for you. I have 4 different ways to do it, but the pattern is written this way. So once you've done that, you're just going to take a ruler and you're going to trim off the excess fabric like that. And then you're going to press this guy open, and that is the 1/2 of the flying goose. So then once you've done that, you're going to go ahead, mark another square, align it on here, flip that open. You will definitely trim off the excess, press it, and there is your flying geese. So you'll need to make those for the blocks, following how many it says in the pattern. And then you also need to make this color arrangement of flying geese for the sashing, which I will show you once we're done what the sashing looks like. So you do these for the blocks, these for the sashing. Once you get all your flying geese done, it's time to do the half square triangles, which are in the corner of our block. And how you do that is you put 2 pieces right sides together, and you would draw a line again from point to point, and sew a 1/4 inch on either side. Same issue. When you go to mark these, you're using 2 points. So I do use same ruler. And this time I do the same thing. I line the top and the side of the ruler and the diagonal. Because these squares are 7/8 and this ruler isn't a 7/8 ruler, there's no way to align the bottom. But you still got 1, 2, 3 things you're aligning. You draw your line, flip it over, repeat on the other side. And now you have 2 lines that are each a 1/4 inch off the center there. And then when you go over to the sewing machine, this time you sew on your lines, and that is going to give you 2 half square triangles. And again, you would take a ruler, cut this in half, and flip these open and press them to the dark, and you have 2 half square triangles like this. You do want to trim your those little things off. They're called dog ears. And how I do it is I stack several of them up, aligning the edges, and I just snip them off. You don't want to leave them in the project because they can get caught in your seams when you're trying to sew. Quilters will hit it when they're trying to quilt the quilt. So just get rid of the bulk and trim those away. Now we have our half square triangles and our flying geese. And the next step is really, really easy. You are going to take one of these squares. you're going to sew a flying geese to each side of the square. And you're going to take another flying goose and sew the half square triangles onto the square and then sew them all together to make the pieced block. So that's the one block in the quilt. The other block in the quilt is the panel block, which we fussy cut the panels. We've sewn the first border on. And again, like I mentioned earlier, these panels can come in a little bit different than what we think the size will be. So I always put on a border that's wider than it needs and then trim it to size. So in this case, this measures 11.5 and we need it to be 10.5. So we have to take a 1/2 inch off each side. I've already done my math because this is 1 1/4 from seam to edge and seam to edge, which means I need to take my ruler and I align it on the 3/4 inch line because that's 3/4 plus a 1/2 is 1 1/4. So I want to make sure that I'm using the ruler to align it on a seam and make sure this is nice and clean. You could, knowing you need to take a 1/2 inch off, you could just do this and cut the 1/2 inch off. But I'd rather do the math, take the measurement I have, which is again 1 1/4 minus a 1/2 gives me 3/4. Now I can use the edge of the ruler on the sewn seam and know this is going to be 3/4 inch from the square. The other way is a little less accurate. So we're going to trim off each side, and it's supposed to measure 10.5, which it does. And then once we have all 4 sides trimmed, we can go ahead and add the second border onto the block. And that, hang on a sec, let's finish trimming. All right, now that we have this trimmed up, the next step is to sew the second border on, which you're going to sew the sides on first and press it, and then you're going to go ahead and sew the top and bottom. So now we have our 2 blocks for our Night Blooms quilt. This one and this one. So the next thing is the assembly of the quilt. Now this quilt is made with sashing. And so I've gone ahead and I've sewn a piece of sashing together. You'll see this is using the Flying Geese that we did in the second colorway. 2 3.5 inch black squares, and then the packed flowers that are also 3.5 inch. And you're gonna do the sashing, you'll do one. You will do 2 with the Flying Geese pointing down, and then up, and then down, and then up, and then you'll do 3 in the opposite direction where it's pointing up, pointing down, and pointing up. And then when you sew your quilt together, the sashing goes like this. This block will always go with this out here next to it. And this one will go like this to create that pattern. And then there's other sashing that will go in between the blocks. So that is how you put this quilt top together. This is just a crash course in how it goes. All of what I've just covered is in the pattern. I want to thank Benartex for sending me the fabric to create this tutorial for you guys, and I hope you have enjoyed watching how this quilt will come about. And here it is again. I'll put it up here on the screen for you to see. It is a very fun, very nice quilt. The center, you're going to get the center done, and then you put that lovely wide stripe border on the outside, and you're going to miter the corners, and that is this fabric here again. And just makes a stunning, beautiful 84 inch by 84 inch quilt. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick tutorial on Night Blooms. If you have, make sure you like and subscribe, because we do a lot of tutorials and unboxings and all kinds of quilting videos here at the Whimsical Workshop. And we appreciate you stopping by to check this out today. And thanks again.